You thought you thought you were gonna get Zilean today? Yeah? You're mad because the next champ they revealed it's not Zilean, it's Taliyah? Yeah? You gonna cry about it in your room? Yeah? You were so sure that it was gonna be Zilean? But it's Taliyah instead? You thought you got it right? Yeah? Well, you got it wrong.
Got him!
All right, pour one out for all the people that thought they were gonna get Zilean as a champion today. And it turns out we got Taliyah instead, along with a bunch of other cards. Also, I'm back in my pajamas. So, well, these are old pajamas, to be honest. I'm really I don't have that many pajamas to wear, boys and girls. Anyway, all right, let's just jump right into talking about Taliyah and the other cards that got shown today. All right, so Taliyah, 5 mana, 2/4 at level 1, reads play, summon an exact copy of an allied landmark. In order for her to level up, you will need to summon 5 or more landmarks. At level 2, she's a 3/5, keeps her playability, and also gains an attack skill called Threaded Volley that reads deal 2 to my blocker. If it's dead or gone, deal 2 to the enemy nexus instead. If you have a landmark, do this 2 more times. All right, so first off, Taliyah doesn't need to be in play to level up, which is good. It means there is no way she will literally be at the bottom tier of champions in LOR as far as win rate goes and as far as play rate goes. So that's good. Secondly, her level 2, it doesn't carry games on her own, at least in normal circumstances, but it's still quite interesting. It kind of makes her a pseudo fearsome unit that can be blocked by something, but that something will likely die in the process, since Taliyah decks are normally going to have at least 1 landmark in play based on the rest of the cards that were revealed here today. And we'll talk about the rest of these cards later in the video. But let's talk about decks and champions. So I think there were enough cards shown here to make Taliyah her own deck. However, I also think which cards you play will determine which champion will pair best with her, as I believe she has multiple options when it comes to champion pairings. Just as an example, if you decide to play Ancient Hourglass, you might want to pair Taliyah with other champions that have effects when they're summoned or when they attack, especially if you can pair Hourglass with Taliyah. Gangplank is probably not the best example, but it is an example. However, let's say you want to go with Roiling Sands and you want to make a bunch of Roiling Sands landmarks. Then you might want to look at champions like REKT or even some of the Demacia champions that can take advantage of your enemies having vulnerable. Talking champs like Garen, Jarvan IV, or possibly even Shyvana. Shyvana in particular sounds interesting, so hear me out. You can use her and any other dragons you have to challenge vulnerable units and level her up. But that's only going to happen if Shurima manages to get a playable dragon in this set, which is something we have yet to see. And we also probably need to see another Shyvana buff. Anyway, there are other champions, I'm sure, that pair well with Taliyah. I even think Taliyah has potential in a more spell-heavy list. I kind of feel like no matter what, when in doubt, you could just pair Taliyah with Twisted Fate and the Preservarium landmark that we got yesterday, that was spoiled yesterday. So that's probably worst case scenario. Just pair her with Twisted Fate, and then the Preservarium will help Twisted Fate level up. So yeah. All right, Stone Weaving. 1 mana burst spell. Look at 3 random landmarks you can afford. In the case of Taliyah's champion spell, you create a Taliyah in your deck. Oh, you also pick one to create in hand. Forgot about that, sorry. All right, so Stoneweaving, this card's not bad. But because the wording makes it seem like you look at 3 landmarks from any region, not just the ones you're running in your deck. I'm not positive that Taliyah decks will use card slots to actually run this card standalone, and instead they'll just cast this as a champion spell. Maybe this is a one-of if Taliyah decks can fit it in, but even that might depend on the other champion you decide to play with Taliyah. Next we have Shape Stone. This is a 1-mana burst spell that reads, give an ally +1/+1 this round. If you summon a landmark this game, give it +3/+1 instead. So this is going to be specific to decks running Taliyah, since this is basically a Radiant Strike outside of decks that can't consistently summon landmarks. I'm even a little hesitant to say this will be a core card in Taliyah decks that you would automatically run 3 of. I will say that as long as Taliyah decks have the space, they will run this card. But I can see a world later on where this card actually gets cut for other cards in those same decks. All right, next we've got Ancient Hourglass, 2-mana fast spell. Obliterate an enemy and summon a stasis statue in its place. And the stasis statue is a landmark for 2 mana that reads countdown 1. Summon an exact copy of the obliterated unit I replaced. So during the Taliyah reveal video, they showed this crazy combo of using Ancient Hourglass on your own Taliyah with another Taliyah in your hand, which allowed you to play the other Taliyah, copying the stasis statue and then resummoning the first Taliyah you played twice, giving you 3 on the board at the same time. So now this card's getting me thinking about what other champions or followers this could combo with. Initially, I'm thinking anything that has a powerful summon ability or attack skill. So maybe champions like Anivia, Gangplank like I mentioned earlier, or maybe even Ashe. I'm not saying these champions have good synergy with Taliyah in general. They're just simply examples, that's all. All I'm saying is that this is how we need to be thinking if we're trying to get the most value out of this card. But this is even decent on Rockhopper, since you get to basically summon 2 landmarks if you need your Taliyah to level up quickly. And I think that's worst case scenario for this card. But I do also think this is an optional card and not something that's going to necessarily be core to Taliyah decks. This has quite a bit of potential in specific scenarios, but the floor may be a bit too low in too many other scenarios. Speaking of Rockhopper, let's talk about that next. 2-mana 3/1. When I'm summoned, summon a Roiling Sands. And Roiling Sands is a 2-mana landmark that reads, when an enemy is summoned, destroy me to grant it vulnerable. I'm up and down on Rockhopper. I think overall this is good and will be played in Taliyah decks. And in the worst case, it'll be because those decks have to play this card. You get a body along with a landmark, and the body has synergy with other cards you might be playing like Ancient Hourglass. Speaking of Roiling Sands, this is going to be relevant for Rockhopper and the next card we'll be talking about. Some players might argue that you can play around Roiling Sands by playing a unit you don't care about. But it's still going to be disruptive because you could have been planning to play a high impact unit that turn to try and swing the game. And then Roiling Sands might end up taxing your mana because you don't want that unit getting vulnerable. And you might have enough to play a cheap unit to get rid of it, but then you might not have enough mana to still play the unit you really wanted to play. And mana is probably the second most important resource in Legends of Runeterra, I would say, next to actual card advantage. And Roiling Sands only get more disruptive in multiples. Also, they can be pretty insane against control and combo decks that naturally run less units, since they don't have as many units that they can simply just throw away to the sands. So yeah, if Taliyah's around, Rockhopper will likely see play. Let's talk about Unraveled Earth next. 3-mana burst spell that summons 2 Roiling Sands, and you draw 1. Unraveled Earth, I'm not quite sure on. I do think it's pretty good since it's a burst spell. It replaces itself, and you get 2 Roiling Sands for the very reasons we just stated. You want them in multiples to be more effective. I think it'll just depend on how Talia decks end up being built. It's possible that Talia decks want to run this and Rock Hopper if they need the landmark generation for consistency. All right, we've got a Psy Scout next. 3 mana, 2/4, play, predict, and if you pick a landmark, grant me elusive. Pretty sure this is going to be a core card for Talia decks. Even if you don't get to grant this elusive, a 2/4 stat line on a 3-drop, while it's not great, it's not the worst thing in the world either. That said, you do want this to go off as much as possible. So it's going to be about balancing how many landmarks you actually need to end up running in a Talia deck for this to go off a high enough percentage of the time. Just based on some very loose calculations I did using a hypergeometric calculator, which for those new is just a calculator that helps you find the odds of seeing a specific card in your deck by a certain turn. The number of landmarks you'll need to run for this to go off, somewhat consistently anyway, is probably going to be between 4 and 6. You could run more than 6 landmarks, but that's probably also too costly for your deck and actually might make your deck worse. All right, Desert Naturalist, 4 mana, 2/4. That has a play skill called Team Spirit that reads destroy a landmark. If it's allied, summon a Grumpy Rock Bear, which is a 5 mana, 5/4. This is another card I'm back and forth on. It'll probably end up being core to Talia decks. This is good at dealing with enemy landmarks, especially if you're in the mirror match, assuming Talia is going to be meta. The stats are a little underwhelming for a 4-drop, but we also have to keep in mind that the meta in Legends of Runeterra has historically used understated 4-drops in favor of their abilities. We're talking cards like Grizzled Ranger, the Fangs, even Babbling Bjerg. So this card might be able to get away with just being a 2/4 depending on what the meta is doing at the time. As far as targeting your own landmarks, you're likely going to end up targeting your Roiling Sands or your Hibernating Rock Bear to activate this a turn earlier, something we'll get to in a bit. I was initially thinking Stasis Statue from Ancient Hourglass, but it doesn't seem like it's worth it. Unless there's some combo I'm not thinking of. Talia herself works much better with Ancient Hourglass. All right, let's talk about Hibernating Rock Bear. It's a 2 mana landmark that reads countdown 3, summon a Grumpy Rock Bear. So based on the reveal trailer we saw for Talia today, this seems to be the main card that holds all the synergies between all the cards shown here together. I'm expecting this card to at least be played between the 2 landmarks that are being shown here that summon the Rock Bears in Talia decks. I think this card is okay on its own, since you get a 5/4 by round 5 if you played this on round 2, which isn't bad. And Talia can copy these later on to get them in multiples and keep the Rock Bears relevant. A pretty straightforward landmark, with the biggest key being that it's cheap to play. And lastly, we have Salt Spire, 4 mana landmark that reads countdown 2, summon a Grumpy Rock Bear. Then, if you summon 4 or more landmarks this game, grant the strongest ally +2/+2. With the cards we've seen so far, I actually don't value this card as highly overall. I will say that if you're going to play Salt Spire, you'll likely have to play both Unraveled Earth and Rock Hopper. You need to be able to summon as many landmarks as possible in the early game for this to be consistent towards the mid game. The card is all right on its own, but it's only truly good if you're willing to pay the deck building cost to make it good. By itself, this is probably not, you're not gonna get the full effect for this card until the late game if you can't manage to play enough landmarks early enough, at least in my opinion. That's all the cards we got today, though. We actually got quite a bit today. 10 cards in total, if we're counting Talia herself. But appreciate you guys sticking to the end of the video. If you made it this far, feel free to hit the like button. Lets me know that you made it to the end. Helps in the algorithm, of course. Helps get the video out there to others in the Legends of Runeterra community here on YouTube. Ultimately helps the channel grow. So again, You do not have to hit the like button, but if you do, it helps me out, and I very, very much appreciate it. So if you don't want to miss future videos from me, subscribe to the channel. That's also just below the video. If you hit the notification bell, that actually guarantees that you don't miss a video from me, because then you'll actually get a notification of when my next video goes live. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Want to thank you guys for taking time out of your day to watch this. And oh, leave a comment if you made it to the end. Let me know that you enjoyed your stay. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.